Good evening and welcome to another edition, a live edition of the Magpie Circle. Oh, ye of little faith. Oh, ye of little faith. A few weeks ago, when I was banging on about this group of players is good enough to get into the playoffs, everybody said not a chance, no point qualifying for them because we'll only get knocked out anyway. Well, it's changed a little bit. Guaranteed in the playoffs. By the Magpie Circle computer reckoning, we need 1 point to be assured of 5th place and a home draw. Special guest this evening, Charlie Slater from the BBC. Charlie, delighted to have you on board. We know your schedule's very tight, so we've got you for the first half an hour till 7:30. So we've got plenty of things to chat to you about. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here again.
Delighted. Beth, good to have you back on board. Like me, you were in the crowd Saturday, so we're all happy. Welcome again.
Thank you for having me on again.
Yes. Okay. Charlie, and this kind of backs up our first question or observation from Ian Burchnall, the fan, not the manager. Good evening, all. How good did that feel to be back at Meadow Lane? Awesome indeed. And no anticlimax of a bad performance. Buzzing still. Aaron Porter, must admit, I thought you, i.e. me, had lost the plot when you said that we would still make it. 3 weeks later, we look like world beaters. I will never question you ever again. Well, I won't go quite that far, please, Aaron. I'll give you a little story about fans' dedication. Guy sat in front of me 3 rows in the cop, turned around to me. He arrived just as Ruben Rodriguez was about to put the penalty in. And he recognised me. And he said, guess where I've come from? I said, I don't know. He goes, the Isle of Arran. And he got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get the ferry to Ardrossan and then driven all the way down from Ardrossan to Meadow Lane. I didn't get his name, but he does watch. So above and beyond the call of duty. Charlie, you've seen all these games with no fans in. You've now seen a game along with the rest of us with us back in. What was the difference like for you?
Night and day. Night and day. And first of all, fair play to the guy that's driven all the way from the Isle of Arran and all that sort of stuff. And I'm just so glad it was worth it. But night and day. I cannot begin to, weirdly say how much it meant for like me and for Stow and just the rest of us who have been there all season long to have fans back in there again. It was remarkable. And I so excited, before the game. People say, oh, it's like being a kid on Christmas morning. It was like that, and I don't get that excited for Christmas anymore. But prior to the game, there was just this buzz inside you that you rarely feel as an adult. And I'd go as far as saying that it was more exciting and to be a part of than the Wembley playoff final last year by a long shot. And I know that sounds odd because I know how much you'd have killed to be in Wembley that day, but to have all the fans back in there, not all the fans back in there, of course, but the 4,197 back in there, it was amazing. And I say all of that to say that for the players, the buzz must have been just incredible. And I think you saw that on the pitch for the first 10 minutes or so, where at times the touches were a little bit like they had a trampoline built into the boot rather than a cushion. And, I just think that was the excitement of being back in front of fans again, because what Notts do have in that team are some entertainers who want an audience to entertain. And I think you saw that, and you'll know the players that I'm on about there. It made a huge difference to have the supporters back in there. And I think it will continue to make a big difference going forwards to have supporters back in the stadium. I think they'll get used to playing in front of crowds again much quicker than what they had to get used to playing in front of empty stadiums.
Great stuff, Charlie. A few more comments before we go to you, Beth. Shafi Tab, and this is what it's all about with something, not just our podcast, but other podcasts, interaction with fans. Shafi Tab bought my Portugal flag for Ruben on Saturday and got a message saying he loved it. Saw Charlie picked up on it on Saturday on radio. Maybe time for a Zimbabwe flag, Adam Chickson, next game. Ian Burchnall, the fan, big shout out to all those fans that sang my name. Just a shame my dad wasn't there to hear it. He would be made up. Zedo, evening all, Paul. Will we see you in the Cop again? Depends if I press the wrong buttons for the tickets next time if we have a home playoff. But I did enjoy it, yeah. Ian Bagger, I didn't sleep a wink the night before. Great to be back. The atmosphere was amazing. Gary Smithhurst, first half an hour, Notts were pedal to the medal. We get them from all over the world here, you know, Charlie. Neil Smith, good morning from New Zealand. Good result, good crowd, great performance. Come
There's
on.
an All Blacks jersey on the wall.
Very good. Very good. I still say Henrik Jorgensen from 2001 is even better. But,
I dare say, I mean, who needs the 2015 World Cup winners ones when you've got Jorgensen?
Colin Metcalf, watching live rather than on the stream, it's amazing to see the effort the players putting off the ball. We look like a team on a mission. I try not to get too excited, but crikey, that was good. Pythagorean went from Shiskeen, Isle of Arran to East Fife. Not quite sure why you would, for pre-season friendly in Scardina. Oh, we played there, did we? I can't remember. We played East Fife away. Crikey. Alex Shacklock, regular on the show. Brilliant day in performance on Saturday. The side looks exceptionally balanced right now. Big thing now is maintaining momentum, and fingers crossed we don't pick up key injuries on Saturday. Beth, what was it like for you in the stadium? You went with your mum and dad, yeah?
Yeah, my little sister is home as well, so I went with her as well. So it was a family occasion. Absolutely amazing. The atmosphere, everything about it. Just being in a stadium full of that many people. Obviously, we've not been able to do that for 14 plus months, and with what's gone on the past 14 months, no one has been in a group of people that large that are all happy at the same time for something. So to come together again and have like a common cause, whatever happens, happens. But it was even better that it was a fantastic performance. We had lots to cheer about. Three big goals, and you cheer the penalty before you've taken it. So the penalty cheer from penalty, everything that happened was absolutely fantastic. I couldn't think of a more perfect return to Meadow Lane, to be honest. And I think I probably speak on behalf of everybody. I think you could see people turning up an hour earlier than they usually did, just to say hi to everybody, to give people a wave, and it was buzzing from the moment I stepped out the car. To be honest, it was just fantastic. It was brilliant.
Speaking to the players after the game, Charlie, and to the manager, what was their reaction to it all?
They were blown away. They were surprised at how loud it was, and I think everybody that was in the stadium was, giving it more than they would usually give. And I think Stow said it's like everybody's been caged animal, and it was like a heartbeat restarting when they were allowed back into Meadow Lane at the weekend, which was really nicely put. And I picked up on everything you were saying there, Beth. We were asked to get there particularly early. Usually, behind closed doors games, we're asked to not get there too early, so they don't let press journalists in until either 45 minutes to an hour before kickoff, and they don't let broadcast journalists in until it's either 90 minutes to 120 minutes before. This time they were saying, please make sure you're in by 1:30, that sort of stuff. And when we were getting there, you could see that people had just had enough of sitting at home. I imagine the clock was doing slow motion on Saturday morning. And so people were just like, I can't sit at home any longer. I'm just going to go down there, even though I know I'm not allowed in yet. And there was a moment when the players ran. First of all, you went, oh, this is going to be special. When Sam Slocum, Luke Pilling and Jake Keane came out to warm up long before kickoff. And there weren't that many people in the ground at that point, maybe 400, 500, 600. And the noise that everybody made at that point, when usually it's met with nothing, if not more than just that. So when the players came out to warm up, and then when the players came out at 2-3, I think it'll be something I'll remember for the rest of my life. There was a lady that said, as the players came out the tunnel, she must have been right next to the tunnel in the Pavis, and I heard her go, "Come on, you pies!" Before everybody else in the stadium, this lady's voice rang out, and at that moment, the 4,196, because our man from the Isle of wasn't there yet. So the 4196 in the stadium at that point just went. And from talking to Kyle Wootton afterwards, talking to me and Burchnall afterwards, everybody was shocked Like, they couldn't believe the noise. And for the players that had never played in front of fans before at Meadow Lane, you think about, like, say, Mark Ellis. For him to play in front of the crowd there and to realise the stature of this football club and the fan base that it has after giving everything that he's given so far on loan and the blood and the stitches and all that sort of stuff, I imagine it was one of those moments where he just went, oh yeah, I'm having this. And I think that was the same for a lot of the players, whether it be a Ruben Rodriguez who said in an interview, it got bleeped out. My phone keeps falling over, apologies. He was in an interview about a week and a half ago and it got bleeped out and it may have got cut out. I can't remember, but he said something along the lines of, I said, are you the type of person who likes to play in front of a crowd? And he said, oh yeah. He said, oh yeah, you know, he's a character. He went, oh yeah. He went, you know, when there's a crowd in, sometimes I like to take the out of my opponent. And I thought, yeah, that's something, isn't it? And, you know, it was just wonderful afternoon. And I don't think it was lost on anybody that was in there, from the fans to the players to Ian Burchnall. The magnificence of the afternoon, I don't think will be lost on anybody.
We'll come to you a little bit more in the second half of the commentary. Don't feel left out, Beth.
That's fine.
I want to pick up on Charles' comment. So with what you're talking to us about, how the players felt, the manager felt, how important is it to get a home playoff tie for us?
Massive, absolutely massive, because as important as it was for Notts, you got to bear in mind, if we don't get a home quarter final, it's going to be perhaps equally as important to the other team, to the team that Notts are then having to travel to. So it's doubly important. And you talk about momentum. I think momentum is massive. Generally in football, momentum is massive. I think I might have said last time talked about momentum, and it goes both ways. You know, the momentum of losing. Think about the relegation season. That was why nobody could turn it around, because it was this big old snowball that was rolling down a hill and gathering momentum. It works this way as well with winning. And last year, when Notts won 6 on the spin and the season came to a halt, everybody wondered what could be. Whereas now, they're winning all these games, and that same sort of momentum is with the football club. And it feels like it's clicked in the same way, that we hopefully don't have to wonder what could be. We can just hope and dream about what will be or what might be for the remaining games. And so I just think with that crowd in there, bear in mind as well, there's no away fans. Meadow Lane can be lonely. You got them 4 big stands all around it, which is an anomaly to clubs in the National League. You won't see this because you're not allowed in early enough, but you will have seen this at times, Paul. And in fact, Beth, you might have seen this as well when you're down there with visiting, when you played at Meadow Lane and had visiting teams. They walk in like they're at Disneyland, the players, like that with their phones, taking photos and videos of themselves, and they're FaceTiming family and friends and going, get me, look at where I'm playing. You throw fans in on top of that, and Notts come out of the gate at you like they have been doing for the last 6 or 7 games. It can feel like a lonely place. So I think it's crucial. I think it's so important that they get a home quarter final, because momentum's everything. Keep building that momentum. I can't see us not going anywhere apart from Torquay away in the semi-finals, should Notts get that far. And that's going to be tough. So keep building that momentum. Give the Notts fans that another day in the sun at Meadow Lane before hopefully we then can all go to Bristol City, which sounds odd as a destination for the playoff final, but whatever. I think it's very important.
We got over the finishing line in terms of being assured of a place in the playoffs. But the intensity, the blanket finish that we thought may happen is happening for those last 2 places. You know, you looked at Chesterfield, something like the 94th minute, Bromley, 96th minute, real blanket finish, which shows you just how important it is to all of these other teams. Halifax play Chesterfield. We're at Bromley. Mathematically, we need a point. We'll know a little bit more after Eastleigh play at Altrincham tomorrow. I don't see Eastleigh not winning there, to be honest with you. I don't see Eastleigh not winning. Bromley, well, probably one of the most intense teams we've played, certainly under Woodman, the manager. You know, to be where they were on Saturday, and at one point were 10th, needed the win, and to pull a winner out 96th minute tells you they never give up, and they looked a strong team against us. It's going to be a massively difficult game, I think, on Saturday. Of all those chasing teams, I think Bromley's about, given Sutton are promoted, Torquay in the playoffs, Stockport or Hartlepool will be, I think, with playoffs. I think Bromley away is probably the single toughest game you could have.
You may well be right. Yeah, you may well be right, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing though for Notts, because to go back to the momentum thing, if you're in a big game like that, a game with great intensity, there's no place to hide. There's no place to, take a bit of time off. There's no place to be thinking, oh, I don't want to get a knock before the playoffs, that sort of thing, which will undoubtedly be at the back of a few's minds. But I think it's ultimately to have won and to have guaranteed a playoff position, but to still need something at Bromley to secure a home quarter final, given how wonderful Saturday was, I think is like the perfect balance. I think it's the perfect situation to be in, because there's pressure, but not too much pressure. And there's just enough on the game to ensure that those Notts players go in there and continue to maintain the standards that they have done of late. And there are players in that team that drive those standards right now as well. And like I say, momentum. You think Michael Doyle is going to let them take an afternoon off? Particularly now he's got that extra bit of responsibility as the assistant head coach, and he's got Ian Burchnall's ear like that. He's not going to let the players take any time off. And Jim O'Brien out there and the intensity that he offers, I think it's the perfect opportunity. And I agree with you. It's probably the most difficult away game that you could have on the final game of the season. But I think that actually is probably to Notts' benefit, given what they've got to come.
If my maths is correct, because of Bromley's poor goal difference, significantly poorer, the reality is Bromley have to win to get into the playoffs to stand a chance. So I can see it being, quite almost a basketball style end-to-end. It's almost, I think, as Gary Smithhurst has just said, it's almost like another playoff game within its own right before the playoffs start.
But if Notts play the way that they play, which is possession heavy, then, and I don't dispute, I think there will be times in the game where it goes back and forth. But I think if Notts play their game, I genuinely believe this, that they beat everybody right now. And as long as they combine that with resolute defending, and they have done of late. I mean, credit to Richard Brindley. I mean, when he's coming on that right-hand side of defence, I've always thought he's like a Rolls Royce of a defender at this level. But to play on the right side of defence and not get picked on by big strikers who just go and sit on him. And the same credit applies to Adam Chickson as well. It probably helps that they've got this lunatic in the middle that just goes and heads and kicks and sticks his head on absolutely everything. So I think that helps. But I think they go into the game in a really good position. And as long as they play their game, high intensity, mixed with solid defending, dogged defending, the way they defended at Wrexham, the way they played at Wrexham is as good as a performance as you'll see. They go and do that, which is a big ask given that you've just qualified for the playoffs and what you've got to come. But if you go and do that, I don't have any concerns.
In answer to a couple of the people on the messages here, yes, technically, if we win and Hartlepool lose, we would finish fourth. Hartlepool are at home to Weymouth. They only need a point to be guaranteed a fourth. I don't see Hartlepool not getting a point. But technically, it is possible for us to finish fourth if we win, and of course, that would ensure us a home playoff game as well. Were we to lose to Bromley and Wrexham win there at Dagenham, although there's a +1 goal difference in our favour, the fact we would lose and they would win would mean Wrexham would go above us. And that's without factoring in what Eastleigh do tomorrow. If they win tomorrow, they can still overhaul us. Where do you see these playoffs ending up on? Gazing into your little crystal ball, Charlie, before we then look at recruitment before you have to go. How do you see it panning out Saturday?
It's difficult to say without the Eastleigh game. That kind of is the fly in the ointment, isn't it? Because that can really complicate things with Eastleigh. But let's say Eastleigh win. tomorrow, and they move on to 68 points, which means that the playoffs are Hartlepool, Notts, Eastleigh, and Wrexham.
Yeah, Eastleigh go one place behind us. They go 5th tomorrow if they win. That kind of puts it into context of Eastleigh are a serious contender in this because of this game they've got tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that this is difficult. I don't see Notts not finishing 5th now, if I'm honest. I think they'll finish 5th, and I think they'll get a home tie, and I think the home tie will be against either Eastleigh or Wrexham. I think it'll be either Eastleigh or Wrexham, and then I see Notts going to Torquay in the semi-final, and then I see Notts Stockport in the final. That's how I see it, and then obviously I see us starting again in August, early August in League Two. So it works, right?
Beth, sorry for ignoring you for a little while. What's your take on playoff composition come? I was going to say 5 o'clock Saturday, but that would be a lack of prep, wouldn't it? They're all 12:30 kickoffs, so no extra lie-ins on Saturday. They're all 12:30 kickoffs. Where do you see it all come 2:30 on Saturday?
I've actually changed, because obviously we predicted the table, didn't we, last week? I've actually changed slightly because, I mean, I echo Charlie's comments about our last game of the season, and I originally had them down for a draw, but I'm going to overturn that, and I think we're going to win it now. I think Charlie was talking about momentum and the ability we have and the outlets we have. When you think of, I can't think of a player that's underperforming at the moment. I just think taking it all in, I just feel another win on the bounce. But I've got down the predicted table that I think we'll stay 5th. I think Eastleigh are going to jump a few and get in 6th, and then 7th Wrexham, and then 8th Chesterfield losing out, Halifax and Bromley. And I'm predicting that we're going to have Eastleigh, and then the same as Charlie said in the finals and things like that. So it's changed a little bit, but I can't see not slipping out of 5th now. And I predicted a few weeks ago, Eastleigh's games, their running of games has been slightly on the easier side compared to others. And I think they'll, I think I've flipped a couple of their results as well or something, and they've skipped a few places, and I think they'll make it.
Yes, well, it's certainly all to play for. I just want to park the whole playoff race for the last 8 minutes while you're with us, Charlie. So you got to do a very good, very revealing, and a very interesting interview with Richard Montague and Ian Burchnall. And I think something a lot of us have spoken about for quite a long time in terms of the recruitment policy and perhaps wanting to understand a little bit more about it. And I think we certainly do as a result of those interviews. What did you take away from that interview?
I took away from one of the first things that they kind of established, which I thought was interesting, was when they said, and it was Richard that said it, and I've thanked them on Twitter, I thank him again on here for their time, was that he said that the style of football is decided from the top. And so it was the owners who have decided that they would like to play in this way. And then it's kind of, down to the head coach or the manager to employ that system and get the most out of the players. So I thought that was quite interesting, because I also then asked Ian, what happens if you want to change that? What happens if you think that isn't the best way to play the football? But from what I understand and from what I gather, and from what everything was already said anyway when Ian was appointed, they very much share a very similar philosophy, whereas he shared a story more so with Lee from the Post than with me. He hinted at it with me, but went into detail with Lee, which was more concerned how he had once had a difference of opinion with a technical director in, I think it was Viking, but he seemed to indicate that wouldn't be an issue because he and the Reeds brothers very much tally up when it comes to their footballing philosophies. The other thing I thought was interesting that when kind of not pushed on it, but when I sort of said, look, what happens if you want a player and the stats don't back it up? Ian still said, if I would like to think that if I really wanted a player, I'd still get said player, because there will be some players that inevitably pass the eye test, but perhaps don't pass the stats test. I found it interesting. I found it interesting when Richard Montague admitted that it is Moneyball to an extent, but only to an extent, because he was quite right when he pointed out that this is not baseball. This is not pitcher against batsman against however many fielders are out there. Football is much more dynamic than a sport like that. I thought it interesting when he said that there were a lot of people involved, and that he said, look, Football Radar's got something like 200 staff, and he thinks that most of them would like to think that they have some input in it. So I was impressed by the vastness of it. That sounded great. It's got to be put into practice, of course. And have you seen Moneyball, the film? Yeah. They're trying to employ the tactics of statistical analysis and whatnot, or Moneyball, in that first season. And the coach isn't necessarily buying into it, and there is friction there, and eventually said coach leaves and things start clicking I think it's great and everything to have such resource, and it's great to have such statistical analysis and such backing, because it's very, very rare. But ultimately, it's all going to come down to getting the right players in. And then once those players are in the building, getting the most out of those players. Because I think we've seen this season that not always are those players playing up to their ability. And that isn't just the new players that have been signed this season. That applies to some of the players from last season as well. They are now playing up to their ability and possibly exceeding those expectations as well. So I think it's great to have such recruitment. It's great to have all of that statistical stuff as well. I think it needs to be measured against a solid footballing eye that just doesn't go blindly with stats, that instead focuses on a measure of both, because I don't think it can be all one way or the other. I think there has to be a balance. And then once they're in the building, they have to be played in a system that suits them to their best ability, and that can be used on a weekly basis in the National League. Because there's nothing particularly fancy about what Sutton have done. And that's probably reflected by their record against the other top seven. But what they do is they are about as consistent as you can possibly be in the National League. And ultimately, consistency is what is going to get you promoted out of this league. It's no good assembling a side that can do it when the grass is lovely and it's cut and the sun is shining and you're on a roll. You have to be able to dig out a result every single week. And that's going to be the measure of how you get promoted out of the National League. And so that's why I think it's brilliant that they've got such resources. But when they are assembling the football team, there has to be a bit of metal in there as well, which they have at the moment. Mark Ellis, Michael Doyle, Jim O'Brien, yada, yada, yada. Because that balance is ultimately what is going to dig you out performances on a week-to-week basis when the pitch might be crap and when the weather might not be great and when some of those flair players might not be at their best. That's got to be the balance. So great that they've got it, but it's all going to come down to having the right balance, I think, still.
Two opposing views. Why you've been talking there, Charlie?
I talked for a while.
NCFC Pie. I honestly think Charlie's interview with those two was so refreshing to hear. I really think we are in safe hands and looking forward to the future. And Kevin J.S. Duska Jr., our regular from Montreal. Blimey, I'll get my thesaurus out for this one. Moneyball sabermetrics can't directly apply to football, as baseball has distinct defensive and offensive phases with self-contained statistical measures. And while you're still working that one out, the dynamic, he goes on to say, the dynamic nature of football, wherein offense and defense interact in symbiosis, produces a very different context for the use of stats. And we've now got a supplementary from Kevin. Nothing to say one can't extrapolate from XG created or another stat. But unlike baseball, more difficult to atomize individual statistical measures. Bloody hell.
Whatever you say, Kev. Whatever you say.
It is a point I want to raise, and then let you go, Charlie. So The owners have bought the club lock, stock and barrel. Therefore, it's their money. So therefore, it is entirely within their right to set an agenda, to set a strategy, because it's their money. They bought 100% of the club in exactly the same way as Ray True did it, and exactly the same way as Alan Hardy did it. And so owners always tend to have a view of how they can achieve success. I think it would be fair to say in the case of Ray, he kind of went with one type of manager, average tenure 1 year, went with a completely antithesis. So he would go with a Sean Derry, and then we'd have a Ricardo Moniz. It was so far different spectrums, irrespective of whether you think Sean's brilliant or Ricardo. Alan came in, decided to remove John Sheridan, with the club having had its worst ever run of results in its history. Now that takes a bit of doing, by the way, because we're a bloody old club. Brought in Kevin Nolan, delivered results for nigh on 15 months, 16 months, had a blip at the start of the following season. Alan decided to go with a Harry Kewell, who clearly has a very distinct formula to play football than to Kevin Nolan. So I think it's a massive tick in the box that the owners are looking to recruit managers, head coaches that they believe will be a fit for their philosophy. And I think, so the theory goes, if Ian leaves in 2 years' time, bigger club, or it doesn't work and he moves on, then we go for a not dissimilar style of manager to conform. But I think where all this is ultimately going to be decided is in the quality of recruitment, because recruitment using conventional methods by Knox with chief scouts and those has not worked for a long period of time. So I'm not anti Moneyball just because it's Moneyball, for want of a better phrase. But this is a big ask in the National League. This has not been done before in the National League, this type of model. And some of the players that we have brought in have had minimal game time, haven't they? Loan players that have come in, very minimal. If you look at the minute, we tend to be going with experienced players that many would say would be a Neil Ardley style of signing. So I think it's going to be incredibly interesting with this recruitment model in the summer. I mean, how big a challenge do you think this model of recruitment is this summer, given, I think Richard Montague said, we need to get out of this division as soon as possible?
It's always going to be, because ultimately it's going to be recruitment that you'll be judged on, and you're absolutely right in that. But like you just said there, that every other way of recruiting hasn't necessarily worked anyway to this point. So why not? Let's try something a little bit different. I always think, because of the wage packet that Notts will be able to offer, they will be able to, even if they got the recruitment wrong, they'd still be able to attract enough talent that would keep them competitive in the National League. So I look at it and think that they might as well, and as you said, 100% entitled to try what they're going to try. I think they should. I think they should go with it. I mean, look, Ruben Rodriguez is one of those players from it. Of late, he's been excellent. And maybe no coincidence that he's been his best all season under the head coach that they brought into the football club. So I think consistency off the field can ultimately lead to consistency on the field. And with that in mind, I think they should go for it. They should continue to do what they are doing, because, like you say, all of the other stuff hasn't exactly worked either. So go with what they go with, back themselves, believe in what they have to offer, because it's got them this far in life. And let's see what happens, because that's ultimately what football is anyway. There's always an element of gamble to it, no matter who you're signing. Say Stockport have signed Paddy Madden and they're paying him a hell of a wage packet. Still a gamble there that he's still got it and a desire, and I'm sure he does, and that he doesn't get injured. And there's a gamble in every facet of football. So gamble, back yourself, go for it, and see where Notts end up. That's ultimately what they've got to do.
Charlie, thank you very much. We'll let you get off. Are you allowed in to Bromley, by the way, on Saturday?
We hope so. It hasn't been decided yet. We have been in touch with Bromley and we're going back and forth with them. We very much hope so. We shall see.
Well, I'm sure everyone here hopes you will be on. I'm not sure whether we'll be able to boycott the stream again if they don't allow you in, given there's so much on it. But I know in the past,
it's such a big game.
A lot of our followers and Notts fans have said, stop the stream because they're not letting Charlie in as well.
No, hopefully not. I mean, it's too big of a game. We hope that we'll be there, but time will tell. We'll let you know.
Charlie, thank you very much indeed. Look forward to getting you in the near future.
Bye, Charlie.
Absolutely.
Beth, sorry about that, but
No problem.
a tight schedule, so we wanted to pick his brains a little bit. Let's just carry on with the recruitment model for a few minutes and get back to the playoffs. What's your take on this? You presumably would have seen the interviews that Richard and Ian gave to Charlie and also to Lee at the Nottingham Post on Thursday, which is excellent. We've all been talking about it for a little while to explain to fans to understand more. They seem to have been very well received. What's your thoughts and take on it?
Positive overall, to be honest. I think it was, and we've been saying it for a few weeks, it was needed, wasn't it? I think there is a lot of fans, particularly generational kind of divide in kind of what we're expecting from this model and what they're actually about. I think the honesty was very much appreciated. I think it was Richard Montague that said, I can't hold my hands up and say that the recruitment model so far has been a perfect success, because it hasn't. But I appreciate the honesty and the talk about what they do, the process of it all, and it makes much more clearer sense to me and hopefully to other people. Especially, I think we've had a few comments on here in recent weeks that there's a lot of doubt in the difference between stats, video analysis, compared to seeing people with your own eyes and going to watch the games and stuff. And I think it cleared up quite well the fact that they have the eye test. The process they go through, how it's, a player's always a unanimous decision with the board. And one thing I will say is I think, again, we've mentioned before, it's quite a generational thing. I think I've obviously grown up in a sport where it's very stats heavy at the moment. I am very big on stats. From my point of view, stats are always there, whether you've used them or not. 30 years ago, the stats were still there. You just say Michael Doyle doesn't lose the ball. Whereas now it's the pass success ratio. The stats are always there, and they're never a bad thing because they back up with evidence what you think about a player. But obviously, as Charlie was saying, you need the combination of being able to go and watch 5, 6, 90-minute games to get that character, to understand what they're like in the changing room, off the ball running. Because, one thing I will mention is watching the streams to seeing the game live, there are a few moments on the pitch that would have looked slower from watching video. It feels faster, it looks faster when you're there. So I think it's very, very important to get that fine balance between watching players in person and being hands-on compared to video analysis. So it sounds to me like, especially because we're expecting some summer recruitments, that they will have been on the ball for a very long time, pre-Christmas, and they've got their eye on players. And a model like this, where you have a stats database, I think it allows younger players who have the ability that may slip through the net, which has been a historical problem in the UK, in football anyway, to get their name on paper. So if you say, I want a Ruben Rodriguez type player, the younger players coming through that net can be identified maybe a bit easier and their name's on the paper. So very positive after seeing and reading up about it all. And I think Charlie's right, and you're right. We've got to, I think my Wi-Fi paused then. We've got to just kind of rally behind and get behind now. We can say that other methods haven't worked before. And we do have some basis that it's a success because it's coming true, it's coming good now. So fingers crossed all goes well, but only time will tell.
Yeah, I think transparency is a key word in all of this as well, because you want to be able to try to understand. It's not a case of agreeing with it or disagreeing with it. Ultimately, this summer and results next season, if we didn't go up, will dictate whether this approach has been deemed a success or not. So results will always out in the end. I think it was well timed, and I think there will be. I think everyone will feel better for understanding a little bit more about the processes. It is purely a personal view on my part. I think we have to give it everything we possibly can this season, because still maintain the next 6 weeks is a far better chance of us getting promoted than it will be next season, if only because we've got a maximum of 5 games to play rather than up to 50 games, which can be an unremitting slog at times. It does appear where everybody is fully galvanized now, and I think that is great to see. Some comments here. ZO, best team in the league, Sutton, through consistency. We were able to take points off them, but we're not consistent. We do take points off the better teams. Playoffs suit us in one-off games. NCFC Pie, in regards to Alexander and Christoph Reitz, I think some fans forget that they've been running their business at the top of their field for 10 plus years. It's not a complete stab in the dark. This is a good analogy. It's a stab in a dimly lit room. NCFC Pie continues. The prospect is very exciting. Hopefully it pays off, but equally they seem very level-headed to realise they can't 100% rely just on the data. Kevin J.S. Duska Jr., the Montreal MLS team recruited a fellow named Harry Novillo based on stats. Problematically, the stats couldn't capture that, let paraphrase, he liked to drink, who spent 5 nights a week in adult entertainment clubs. Anyway, I mean, I think it is an interesting question. How do you find a metric to judge someone's character?
I think they mentioned, didn't they, that they, especially throughout the pandemic as well, so talking about players, when it's been difficult to get down and be involved in close contact with players, I think it's building up that pool of players that have had experience, people that have had experience around these specific players. I know myself as a player in the circuit, you get a name for yourself through every person that comes in contact with you. I have 6, 7, 8, 9 managers, may all say different things about me, but having access to that information and collecting that bit by bit will help somewhat draw a picture of the type of person they are. And then they have to pass the character test, and there's no reason why they can't come in, and you decide actually they don't suit the style of play or the dressing room that we have, because it can happen, it does happen. People can recruit, clubs recruit players and they don't fit in, like the example Kevin just gave there. But it's definitely absolutely important to try your very best to do your homework away from the stats. Stats can't tell you the type of person they are. So it's just important to have the staff and the ability to try and do as much research as possible. Again, it might not be 100% true, and I suppose you end up finding out, but that's the kind of risk and the stab in the, again, dimly lit room that you take when recruiting any player, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the subject of recruitment, and character, then you'd clearly be very concerned that Maurice Ross was chosen to come in as the assistant manager. I know a lot of people in the game. If I'm being honest, I don't know many people that have a good word to say about him, if I'm honest, and that's being polite. I think we've dodged a bullet there. And I think certainly with the involvement of Michael, I think that's kind of galvanized everything. But that's happened. Mm-hmm. We've got momentum we've spoken about now. Other teams are putting 1 or 2 results together as well. We've seen Bromley scoring in the 96th minute, Wrexham coming back and banging a few in after the defeat to us. We're not the only team with momentum right now. We've got more momentum than most because we're top of the last 5 or 6 games. Mm-hmm. But there are a few teams, Eastleigh clearly would fit into this category, that are really hitting form at the right time. It was interesting to hear Charlie's point about a home playoff. I do think a home playoff is absolutely massive to us, absolutely massive. Because I think then if we go to Torquay or Stockport, most likely Torquay if we finish 5th, I kind of think that takes a little bit of pressure off us in a way, because we've finished X number of points behind the other team. So I don't think that's such a major issue for us, but I do think getting a home playoff is absolutely huge. And I think it's a monumentally difficult game at Bromley. They have to win. And they, synthetic pitch, artificial pitch, call it what you will, they will be well and truly wound up for it. And I think we're going to have to meet fire with fire on Saturday.
Massively agree. I think it's going to be a really tough one. Again, I've mentioned that I initially predicted a draw. I think win for momentum. Obviously a bit biased there, but that would be lovely. But it's going to be tough. And like you says, there are teams that are also on good runs, and Eastleigh again, notably, is one of them that's right up there at the moment. It's going to be tough, but I'm excited for what's to come. And like Charlie said, I think the home tie is absolutely vital, completely vital. The comfort of just being at home, the stadium, the fans, and like Charlie and you were saying as well, I just think that with the form that we're in and the club that we are, the size of the stadium, the fans, the support base, clubs are going to be more scared of us and our current form, in my opinion, than we are going to be worried about them. So we've already nicked some points off teams that are playing this weekend, and this is the pivotal point of the season, and I love it, but it's very stressful where people do drop points, and there are going to be big teams, and there are shock results. We have no idea come afternoon on Saturday what's going to happen. Things could completely go the opposite of what we're expecting, but you can only predict and assume. But fingers crossed. I'd love a good win, obviously. If not, I think a point. Going to be tough, but I do absolutely have faith. And like you mentioned earlier, Paul, we've said for absolutely weeks on here that the squad have every quality of making it, and they've proven us correct. So it's been a fantastic run and amazing to be a part of. Obviously, again, going back to being in the stadium at the weekend. We're 5th, down to 10th can still get in the playoffs, might be 9th. There isn't any other team in that group of positions that wouldn't swap places with us right now. Going into this weekend, we are the only team from 5th down who are guaranteed a place in the playoffs. Nobody else is. So clearly, despite the fact we're going to Bromley, we're already in them. We're already in them, and we may be being a bit greedy about wanting a home playoff. But I do think it's important. People just quoting stats. Jurgen says Torquay have drawn 4 out of the last 7. Stockport drawn the last 3. John Collins, isn't Bromley an artificial pitch? Yes, it is. Jurgen, Hartlepool lost 3 out of the last 4. It'd be handy if it was 4 out of 5, wouldn't it? Brandon, the fact Bromley need to come out to attack rather than sit back will suit us even more. Yeah, I could see Sittons on the break. I mean, but it's great to be looking ahead to a playoff campaign, irrespective of how it all goes down Saturday. We've spoken about our younger fans not having had, a great deal of success or enjoyment. We are now putting Bromley aside. 2 games from Ashton Gate, 3 games from being back in the Football League, and all of the excitement, the passion that goes with that. We're going to go on that ride for the next couple of weeks and hopefully more. Yeah, it's the prospect is so thrilling. It's so exciting. It's been many years since I've had any kind of feeling close to what fingers crossed is to come. And I think I speak on behalf of all the fans of my age. I'm very active on Twitter, and I'm very friendly with most people on Twitter. Often tweet and speak about Notts, and even after Saturday, I had a couple of people message me. I didn't know that they'd seen me, but they were like, "Oh, you were sat behind me at the game. Like you're on the Magpie Silver podcast all the time." And I was like, "Oh, you should say hi," and things like that. So I think that collectiveness and togetherness as well really strengthens everything. But especially because there's so many young fans around my age on Twitter, we can all share that excitement online, which has been especially helpful considering, there has been a pandemic. So I think it's just, I'm speaking for everyone, I say the excitement's absolutely building, and whatever the outcome, the ride has been insane, but we, fingers crossed, anything goes to plan.
Yeah, I mean, look, do not underestimate the number of people that watch this channel. Fortunately, from the owners down, all the people, they all watch it. It's a useful barometer for them, and hopefully it's entertaining. There's certainly been a lot to discuss in recent weeks and months, hasn't there? There's rarely a week gone by when there hasn't been something pretty dramatic going off. So we try to reflect that and give all supporters an opportunity to talk about Notts, because in mainstream media channels, with us being National League, BBC Radio Nottingham do a very good job, as does Lee at the Nottingham Post. However, there is a limited amount of space that those guys can get for us. So our podcast, other podcasts, Notts County Talk, there's a new one started, the Analysts Bar, I believe it is. There's more, which is good. Alex Young, Notts have won 5 from 6. Surely we'll never have a better chance. Alan Cotty, shame we didn't get the 6 or 8 goals we could have on Saturday. The extra goal difference could be vital in finishing above Wrexham. Yes, it could. Although if we get a point, it doesn't matter whether Wrexham win 12-0. Zedo, important now that key players stay fit. Injuries and even suspensions could really cost teams. We have depth, but wouldn't fancy us without a Ruben, Kyle, or Mark Ellis, etc. Jurgen Halligan, would you change the side? Don't know how Rawlinson comes back in now. I'll tell you one thing that's interesting. We hear a lot about rotation and all the rest of it. I think I'm right in saying, I saw the tweet, 3 straight games, no changes in the team.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it?
It's a squad game. We rotate. Players can't play 3 games in a week anymore. Yabba, 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 yabba. And here we are at the end of a massively challenging season, and we're playing unchanged teams. I find that funny. Not funny, but
it proves, doesn't it, that it was possible. And I think mindset and mentality, and I say this almost every week, is 90% of football. I think we're playing a good game, and I think, to be honest, I think our passing football, as basic as that sounds, really helps with that kind of thing. We're passing around teams that can't get anywhere near us, so thankfully likelihood of injuries down slightly, but when you have people like Ellis, that I can't remember the last time he bottled or missed a header completely. And the thing is, I can really understand why you wouldn't change your team when it's working. The likes of Brilliant are coming in and doing a different job to usual, but he's been absolutely fantastic. He's an absolute engine there, and our outlets down the side, everything that could go well is going well. So I don't blame him if Rawlinson doesn't come back in. I don't think it would change the side too drastically or anything could go particularly wrong, but I can understand why, or if there would be no changes again, because it is working.
Yeah, I just find that whole scenario, and I know Les Brad from the Jurassic era like me, although he's even older than I am, we talk about physiotherapists, sports scientists advising managers that a player is getting close to fatigue here, there, and everywhere, and they can't play 3 games a week. Well, kind of the last few weeks I've been living proof that it can be done. It can be done. So that's good to see. I wondered if Ballum, from London, obviously Balham, a district of South London, would be on tonight. I think he's closely acquainted with Sutton. Hello, Paul and Beth, one of my local teams. Sutton did it. Indeed, they did. If you lose to Bromley, are you certain of a playoff spot? Yes, Balham. Did you go to the match against Weymouth? It was great to have fans back in after very long. Yes, we both did. And yes, we enjoyed it. Zedo, off topic slightly. Big congrats to Hornchurch. I was trying not to focus too much on the FA Trophy. Massive result for them as a club. Paul Taylor. I think it's Paul Taylor. Well, it's Paul Tay 23. I have a bowls match starting at 2 p.m. Saturday, so we need to have the match sorted by then. Please get one of them. Get your apple pod eye buds in while you're bowling, while you're crown green or whatever it is you're doing. Right. We'll wrap up in a minute. Beth. What? You've revised your opinion. So you fancy a Saturday, yeah? You fancy a Saturday.
Fancy a Saturday now, yeah. I really know what I've got. I've got 4th Hartlepool, us sitting at 5th. Obviously, like you said, if we win, Hartlepool lose, we could do it on a goal difference, but it's not happening. Eastleigh 6th.
Yeah.
Wrexham 7th with just a point behind Eastleigh, and I think Chesterfield are going to lose out in 8th. Halifax 9 and Bromley plummet to 10th on goal difference, and Halifax overtake them on that. So I've got them both sat on 66 with the goal difference. Chesterfield to miss out. I'm predicting them a draw.
That's the kiss of death. Chesterfield, Halifax, was one of those two have to win, basically, don't they?
Yeah. Eastleigh move from 9th to 6th. That's what I'm predicting now. So it's changed slightly from what I have. We're still 5th. I've got every confidence in the squad.
Yeah, like we say, it's impossible to believe, isn't it? What, a month ago, 5 weeks ago? You know,
honestly, even the feel from the switch from the negativity to the positivity has been absolutely overwhelming. I don't remember. I mean, granted, I'm more active on social media now than I was a few years ago, but I don't remember a time where everything was so divided. Every point someone had was a for and against something or a for and against someone now, and I think it couldn't have come at a better time for interviews to be released, the whole campaign where they opened up training sessions, the winning has started to come back, the faith has started to come back, the fans are back. Everything has turned at the most perfect time, and it's just a really positive club to be around, which is what it has been for most of my life that I know. Just a club full of good people, good players, fans. So fingers crossed everything goes to plan. Yeah,
I mean, Carpe Diem, seize the moment. I've banged on for a long time about this is our best chance this season right now to put 100%. A run together, which we've not done. We have put it together. We're not going to go down this route tonight, but the reality is I'm not fundamentally sure, certainly in the National League, that you get better 10% season by season and gradually grow up. If you look at the table from last year, it's staggering. Sutton, Bromley, Wrexham, Chesterfield, all in the bottom 8. Finished in the bottom 8. Barnet, we beat them in the playoffs. We have been by far, over the past 2 seasons in this league, the most consistent team. But it's not necessarily about being there or thereabouts. It's about being exceptional, isn't it? I know Sutton have been the most consistent over 46 teams. Therefore, they have been the most exceptional team. They were going ahead against Torquay, catching Torquay up. That takes an exceptional amount of ability and resilience to, on the face of it, winning by they're probably going to finish 6, 7, 8 points clear of Torquay now in terms of final analysis. But I think you've got to seize the moment when it comes along. You've got to seize that moment, and potentially, this moment over the next 3 or 4 weeks is ours for the taking. It's ours. All this, don't want to play Hartlepool. They beat us twice. We've looked useless. Enzio was right wing back and their blokes pinging balls in. We'll get battered by them. Stockport signed this guy and they'll blow us away. Torquay, all of that has completely dissipated now. All of that has completely dissipated. And I suspect more teams will be worried about us, your point earlier, than we will be about them. But it's all about us. You can play a rubbish team Saturday, and if we don't play very well, we'll lose to them. You can play an exceptional team Saturday, and if we're unbelievably brilliant, we will beat them. The focus is on us, and if we can continue this level of performance and get a little bit of the rub of the green, because you always need that. You always need a little bit of that. You know, if Bromley or Chesterfield make the playoffs, they will both point to 96th and 95th minute goals last Saturday.
Yeah.
So you just need a little bit of rub here and there, don't you? But I think potentially, this moment is ours for the taking.
I do. I completely agree with you. I think it's completely in our hands. And I agree with what you said. I think everything that running up to these games now has gone out the window. It's ultimately team of 11 players against team of 11 players on a pitch. And I think we are favourites against, like Charlie says, in my opinion, against anyone we were to play at the moment. I'd back us against anyone. It's that's all I can say. I just absolutely, completely agree with you. I think it's there for the taking. If we do the job right, which we know we can, we just continue the run. And it's a lot easier to continue a run of being successful like we're on, than to have to turn it and it being laid on the last, because it could have happened. The past couple of games, we could have had a slip up and we didn't, obviously. And could you imagine it coming down to this final game of the season? It'd be a lot harder. We've cemented our place. I think we're going to get a win. But again, like you said, from the games after this as well, it's just ours for the taking now. Everything's going in the right direction, 100%.
On that positive note, Beth, thank you very much indeed for your time, as always. I'm sure hopefully we'll be catching up next week when we will be watching who we're playing in the playoffs. And hopefully we're all scrambling for our home playoff tickets. That will be good, won't it?
Yep.
Beth, thank you very much indeed. Thank you to everyone that's been in tonight. It's been a very busy show. Well done to Belham, your local club, Sutton. Have deservedly won it. I think I went for Torquay. I think most of us went for Torquay about 6 weeks ago. So that tells you how little we know about it all. Thank you again. We will be back on Wednesday. Exact lineup to be confirmed. And don't forget, you want one of these two shirts. I think we need about 10 more subscribers. So just do it. 10 subscribers. We can give one of these two away on Wednesday night's show. Okay. Take care, everyone. Thanks for all your support as always. Good to see those of you who came up and said hello to me in the cop on Saturday. Look forward to catching you all again soon.